You were at Lake Rant where I rant about whatever my $10 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Drank Memer, who says, rant about the disappearance of Digibro versus Suzumiya, everyone. Rant about the end of Digibro Neon shit, fuck. Rant about the unceremonious end of Digibro versus everybody. I mean, I get it. You accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish, and that's fair, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just salty that it took until recently for me to have any real point of contention to hash out with you. Namely, the way that you argue with people makes me want to gouge out my eyes and ears because you'll be presented with opportunities to just completely eviscerate some nerd like Destiny, for example, and instead you just completely shit the bed. Like, you essentially point the gun away from him, back at yourself, and pull the fucking trigger. Yet you've always insisted that you're some god of arguing, but I digress. My point is that there must be some way for you to be able to market the show in a way that people can buy into, and which also fits into your busy schedule. My qualms aside, I got the impression that the show had a decently sized audience. What more would you need to want to bring the show back? Okay. So, there's a lot of factors that go into why this show ended, and also why I haven't brought it back, and also why I failed in the debate with Destiny to put up a good argument. Because, I'll start with that. Because on Digibro versus everybody, my ideal argument was always for us to come to an agreement. And usually that's what happened. Most of the time, people would come in to argue with me about something that was based in some kind of misunderstanding. Either they didn't understand something that I had said, or they misunderstood just some kind of, basic thing. And, like, I would often just clarify, and we'd come away feeling like we agreed. Then there were the arguments where I would concede sometimes, where I would just, like, be factually wrong about something and correct it. And then there were arguments in which we would, argue until we reached, like, the point where there was nowhere else to go, where, like, the only option was, like, we had narrowed down exactly what we disagreed on, and we just agreed to disagree on that thing. These are the terms that I wanted argument to end with. The point of it is to reach an agreement. It's not for somebody to destroy somebody else. And on my show, I never would destroy somebody else. Even when I had on people who were aggressive towards me, I was polite to them, and I would only, basically get mad at somebody if they were getting mad at me and raising their voice. But there's people whose goal in an argument is to just make you look stupid and to dunk on you, essentially. And I find that really annoying. I argued with Tommy C that one time where he basically just, had really, like, it was just kind of a shouting match. I brought up some very basic stuff to counteract, any points he could make, and then it was a nothing burger, and nobody learned anything, nobody came away with anything because nobody's minds were changed. It was just an opportunity for me to, say something that would make my side think, yeah, you totally won that. But, like, who cares? It had no effect on his people, who were not taking it seriously in the first place. Because if you really want to understand the mentality of somebody who's a debater, look at who their audience is. Because if you look at Tommy C and Destiny's audience, they're the exact same. It's a bunch of people who are just constantly aggressively shit talking whoever that person's debating with. They're constantly just, like, on your ass about whatever they can be, and the person feeds into it. They don't want the chat to not do that. They want it to be this overwhelming force of you getting owned visually by everybody. And that's basically what I came into Destiny's debate to say. I said, like, this is how you argue, and it's disgusting. And because of the way that, he fixated on the exact language of what I was saying, then it became a semantic debate. And in the semantic debate, the point that I was trying to make, I would say, was less semantically sound than the point that he was trying to make. And that's ultimately how he won the semantic debate. And no matter how much I tried to re-explain myself afterwards, people's takeaway is the initial meme of what he got me to imply. Like, the way that people understand what I said without having, further context. So it was that failure of of just saying basically a bad sentence that ultimately got me dunked on, because that's the nature of the type of argument he's trying to have, which again is not the type of argument that I try to have. And it was just foolish of me in both cases to really even bother interacting with those people, because if I'm not interested in having those arguments, why am I having them, And this is why I've debated with myself over whether or not I wanted to argue with Vouch, because on the one hand, I think he's a more reasonable person and that it'll be more of a coming to an understanding kind of thing. But, at the same time, like, I don't really trust these types of people who like all they want to do is argue about shit all the time and like present how right they are. Basically, it's like me arguing with Ben, for instance, which we did. It was just more amicable because it's just like a debate between two people who know each other, who are who see things idealistically different, but neither of us is trying to fucking call the other person out and dunk on them in this debate. Unless maybe one of us had really fucking made a fool of ourselves and said some really crazy shit. So anyways, returning to the subject of Digibro versus everybody. So with this in mind, the arguments that I had on there, most of them would lead to resolution where, it whatever the debate was, it comes to an end. We come to an understanding, or we get as far as we can. I wanted it to be a rogues gallery of like everybody who I had ever fought with on the internet coming onto the show. And to be honest, the funny thing about it is that I had set up the show in such a way that I thought it would protect the enemy. Like, by giving the chat all the veto power, basically, I expected when I would have somebody on, for their audience to flood my chat and to sort of be on their side. That didn't really happen. It was usually just my fans in the chat, and they really were much more aggressive with the people who I was arguing with, because they would basically just see them as, yeah, this guy's obviously a fucking asshole, he's obviously a liar, a piece of shit, and so they just don't like him right away. Whereas I'm trying to be as fair as possible to everybody and like come to an amicable conclusion. My chat's just like, no, this guy's a fucking idiot, get him out. And so like most of the time, like really what the show was kind of supposed to be was more of like the Destiny style dunking on people kind of thing, but for my enemies. But instead, it was really more a case of like, well, because of the fact that my argument style is to just come to an understanding with people, pretty much either that happened or it was like, okay, well, we're never going to agree, so that's the end of it. There's no reason for us to interact any further, So, like, I felt like I basically went through everybody who I had major disagreements with, but then the thing is that most people who came on the show were not people who had disagreements with me, were not even people who really had contentions. They were just fans who wanted the chance to talk to me and would just call in and come up with something, and a lot of it was fucking retarded. And, like, it would be one thing if I had a screening service where, like, because, May was doing the operation of, like, bringing people in and out of the call, and was kind of like overlooking the chat to see if people were like requesting somebody to come in, which led to some good moments. And maybe this would be easier to do if we weren't playing a video game, which I just thought like at the time that like Twitch, you had to have a game or else it wasn't a Twitch stream. And I also wanted something to do with my hands while I was doing this, mindless arguing and having to listen to people fucking drone on. But, like, it would be much more helpful if I had it like a radio show, like Rude Jude or something, where there's an operator who, picks up the calls from people, hears what they has to say, and then like puts them through if they're interesting for me to talk to, and that's just a higher level of operation than what I have. So, like, yeah, I basically, I was tired of the show being mostly my fans calling in just to talk to me and not really having interesting arguments. I felt like I got through most of, what I was upset about. But the other reason that it ended is because we were doing it in June of 2018, which is when we had first moved to Boston. And the initial conceit of what I was doing at the time is like I was trying to basically have content coming out constantly because my Patreon had taken a huge hit when I, when I spent like a month basically just moving and not getting any of these big projects that I was working on complete. So I was like, I gotta put out stuff as fast as possible. So I was putting out a bunch of like these Gecko Estate videos and like podcasts and other shit and just whatever I could. And I was doing the live streams to pull in extra revenue, build up my Twitch profile, which I really should have just done them through YouTube because I would have gotten super chat money, and I wasn't a Twitch affiliate or partner until we did I Am Games, which was a much smaller show. So, it would have been, if I ever brought it back, I'd just do it through YouTube and do it with super chats, unless I was going to do it like forever, but I don't know if again I would have to have it as like a fully set up show, like a real radio show, which maybe could happen because I've given a lot of thought to trying to consolidate my content into a more like Dick Show esque or HD podcast esque like radio show that would go through topics and have segments with maybe call-ins and guests, and then maybe be broken into chunks to be uploaded as individual videos or something. But because I've found that people who have one central show have a much easier time like promoting it and getting it paid for. And it's hard to do like a variety show and be popular because it basically has to be carried on your personality and production quality. But maybe it's possible for me. Maybe if I make a show that clicks hard enough, but I have to have better setup for that. So, if a future like that ever comes, maybe we will see the return of Digibro versus everybody. But, I want it to be, I just want it to be something that would be a more consistent and better product before I jump back onto it as like something I'm going to do regularly, because we were doing it regularly. So, but also I meant to say that, in June, at the end of June was when we had the big event that was talked about in the 3 months review or 2 months review podcast on Patreon. We also touched on it in the 3-hour Boston story video. But after that event transpired, we only did one more. And, May had a lot of anxiety about her role in the thing from the beginning because of the fact that she had to kick people out. And there was one time she kicked a guy who kind of felt like that she had done so unfairly and, like, gotten the last word after he was gone. They reconciled, but, like, there was always this kind of question of, like, whether she was fit to be the moderator just because, of course people are going to say that. And so she was like kind of, iffy about it. And after the recording we did when we got back, she wasn't really comfortable being back on the internet yet. So pretty much it was a combination of like her not really feeling that comfortable with it. I wasn't really feeling that comfortable with it. I hadn't really, like, I think the last episode we did was the one that had like a lot of major guests on it. And I basically wanted to do it just because we could get like that particular suite of people. But then after it was done, I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm over it. Like, I've gotten my fill of this, and I think that ultimately, like, this kind of drama shit is beneath me, and the concept of Digibro versus everybody could work, but only with more of a filter and, just a better setup for it. So, we'll see what happens.